I'll give you a little story. This event called the Sierra Trek in Northern California. It's like this. It's kind of just a big meetup, couple hundred people, 100 trucks. They got guided through the Fordyce Creek Trail, which is a very hardcore trail, but it was fun. Just like you'd have all these rock crawlers and all this stuff, but there was always this contingent, and this is the one I just was fascinated by, of the old timers. So you'd have these trucks on like 38-inch tires, like lockers front and rear, full hydraulic steering,
awesome.
4-to-1 transfer case, all this tricks rock crawler trucks. But then you'd have and they'd be like going crazy. But then you have these old dudes in these like 60s era, like still 60s era with carburetors, like these CJ5s and CJ2As, and they would just do everything the rock crawlers would do. And like they had these old trucks that they were preserving,
and they could do it,
but they were using them.
Yeah. And
that's what I've always been fascinated. And I love that that's what you bring to the table too, that like these old cars are rad to look at, but they're better to drive. Like they're fun to drive and to build and do all that good stuff.
There's and I'm, you're the host here, not me, but there's certainly two sides of what you can do with the old cars. I have now, by my mid-40s, started to have more respect for stuff that's actually all original, but functioning as it was designed.
I agree with you.
That was, when I was 16, I did what everybody did, like, yoink, there goes the intake, there goes the exhaust, man.
Right.
This will be better. And you put all the hot rod stuff up, and you kind of clap-trap it together. And then if you were to get in the high school Buick that you got, like, this thing sucks. I hate driving this car. I think I'm going to die.
Right. But it did do good burnouts.
Yeah, that culture kind of gets old. But if you can make something that you look forward to driving, that's not a chore, no matter how good the paint is, you don't really care where you park it. Or if you just, be smart, then they're fun again.
Yes.
And they are a ball to drive fast. New cars are better. I mean, I'm not stupid. A new one's going to blow the doors off, but you have a pretty good time wheeling a 55-year-old rig at 80.
Right, but let's contrast that, because
or anything.
I've talked about this all the time, but I promise you, getting in this 64 Chevelle is different than getting in a 2013 Dodge Charger.
Oh yeah, they're like, they just happen to both have four wheels.
Yeah, but it's like the way it feels,
related.
The way you feel, the way you're like, there's this inextricable connection to the past, like where you're like, oh, this is just rad. There's something about it that's really magical, in my opinion.
There's all of that. I mean, you're also just a little more connected to the machine.
Right.
I completely believe that people maybe of our era and definitely older, they might have just been better drivers because they had to be. Can you imagine rolling around on a 3-inch wide bias ply with drum brakes and manual knuckle steering?
Right.
You better be good at driving it or you're going to die, and that thing's new.
Adjusting the timing on the steering wheel.
That's really as you go, modern tires, and I'm sure this Kenda tire is wonderful, but it's got a factor of safety built in that's saving somebody's life and they don't even know it.
That's right.
So there's a very different connection. But in this Chevelle in particular, I've driven this car since I was 17 years old. I still feel the same when I get in it. I know where the bumper is and I can't see it.
Yes.
The door is 3 inches wide. That's all that's between me and the world.
Yep.
When you get in a new car, that thing's a cocoon. It's built to protect you.
Yeah,
it's very safe.
And insulate.
But it really kind of takes you out of the harm.
Right.
and a little bit of the harm is why old cars are a little bit fun.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's cool. So that's good. So you're kind of already debunking my some of my critique of muscle car culture, in that there is a movement, because I've been kind of out of it. I've been head deep in like 4x4s and vintage 4x4s and just off-roading, overlanding. That whole world is like my world.
Yeah.
I have a couple cars, a couple 80s turbo cars, and I'm building a BMW E30. So I'll get back into like the driving world.
You had texted me like a year ago. Did you buy, I think it was white. What did you buy?
Yeah, I bought a 89 Ford Probe GT
yes,
white 5
that's what it was.
turbo. Amazing car. And then I bought my newest acquisition is an 85.5 Chrysler Laser XE turbo.
Laser. Is that a K car?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah?
It's 2.2.
That's a K car.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, that 2.2 was in
Yeah, a
pretty
lot of
much
stuff.
anything
Right.
they made.
I mean, it's fun. And like, I just like, again, 'cause it's like the quirkiness of them. They're kind of weird. They don't really drive that great, to be honest. They're front wheel drive turbo, so like they get a lot of torque steer, but it's kind of a handful to drive them, and I think that's fun.
It is. I mean, all things kind of eventually become vintage, I suppose. Like right now, there's a huge resurgence in the muscle car world. Not resurgence. The 80s era has come into its own.
Yes.
That's a 30-year-old car now.
Right.
I mentioned Good Guys before. So there's the Good Guys Hot Rod Show, and if you're a muscle car listener, you probably know what that is. At trucks too, but they usually had a year limit on the show.
Yes.
And it originally was for hot rods only, 64 and older.
Really?
If you're newer than
Okay.
64, you suck. You're not
That's
welcome.
old.
Then they bumped that up to 72.
Okay. That makes sense.
And this year, it's now 1987.
Interesting.
So that means when you go to the autocross, you start seeing Fox body Mustangs, third gen F bodies, so Camaros, Firebirds. You see a lot of the G body GM cars. So if you think Monte Carlo Grand National,
Yep.
well, with some simpler bolt-on speed parts, those things go from a decent old 80s car to something pretty good.
Right.
And by the 80s, it is a better car. I mean, it's a more real car.
Yeah.
It's not like the old stuff.
And
it's
people are
definitely
probably
not good
less
like the new
afraid to
stuff.
drive them and use them.
Yeah, and they're somewhat of the entry point. You
Yeah, I
can
love
get
that.
yourself into one of those. Maybe not a Fox body; those are starting to get kind of pricey.
I know I
but
had a few of those. I like those.
but like a G body or something like
Yeah.
you can still find your way in for maybe $5,000 or less, and not get something that's a pile.
Right.
Yes.
That's cool.
Whereas a 68, 69 Charger, you're going to start with a pile at $20,000.
So you're at the heart of this, heart of this experiential move, a move towards experiencing old cars, not just looking at them.
Yeah.
So what is in that world? Like, what are some of the things that you kind of bring in, you and others, but are bringing into the conversation and experience of owning a muscle car or a vintage car?
So there are a lot of parallels to what we're doing right now. So my Chevelle here and this 78.
Yeah.
This 78. These are cousins.
Yeah.
They're both. They're expensive.
You're right.
But they're built very well. They're engineered with high-end speed parts to make something old drive like new.
That's right.
There's that side, and in our world, that's called pro touring.
Pro touring. Okay.
Yeah.
They call it still resto mods too.
That no.
Okay,
Not, well,
okay.
the wrong people do.
Okay.
You, Sean, are cool enough to say pro touring. You've got a flat bill hat.
Okay.
You've got to be
Good,
cool.
all right. Pro touring.
Then there's one of my friends is Mike Finnegan.
Yeah.
He is best known for his work on the show Roadkill.
Yes.
Roadkill is the flip side of our world. That's where you take anything,
Yeah.
rat it together, and just use it.
Yes.
No matter what. It would be more akin to your terribles.
Yeah, which is exactly
Awesome as
Yeah,
well.
right.
There's no wrong answer in here. Not using the car is the wrong answer.
Yes.
Actually, I guess
Okay,
I
love
would
that.
say.
I love that.
But you can take a ratted out anything to any car show and get just as much respect
Isn't
or
that
love
cool?
or
I love that.
engagement as this car here. I love them all. I
Good.
love them both. There's one I probably would rather drive,
Right.
for 1,000 miles more than the
Exactly.
other.
Yeah.
But they all have their place. Getting to build them is probably just in our world. That's probably still more popular than driving them. I'm more unicorn. I would rather drive them than build them. And I love building. I love general contracting them. It's so
Yeah,
much fun
it's right.
for me. I finally get to do a little engineering work and select the right components. And
That is
then
really fun.
if I don't like the components, I can actually work with the manufacturer and say, all right, I want this to be 3 inches this way. What's that going to do to this, and
Yes.
this? That for me is the funnest. But my end goal is always to get to drive it.
Yes. And a similar in the vintage 4x4 world, again, guys want to take them, they want to drive. Like a lot of them are because their Scouts in particular are always convertibles. They're always like removable hardtops.
Yeah.
So people love the idea of cruising to the beach, just kind of getting friends, cruising around. So that's one aspect. But another aspect is getting out on adventures and getting off the pavement to some really remote and beautiful places. And so we see a lot of customers just getting stoked about that. Like, just, hey, can I put this bumper on there that might help me carry some extra fuel, or a roof rack so I could put a rooftop tent on it, or just
like this. What was the Scout with the topper on it? That, like, the Dirt Everyday guys were here.
Yeah, really
And so,
cool.
like, okay, that's as experience as it gets. Like,
That's right.
We'll live in this raining truck.
Yes.
And they got a little taste of Iowa summer too,
Yeah,
right? I'm
right.
like, sorry about the monsoon.
right.
It does happen.
Just, and what's cool is I was just at the Nationals, and one thing you said is really true. I'm growing more and more to respect the preservation of, well, still use, but the preservation and use of like totally original stuff, because it tells a story. Like, it's one thing looking at this truck, but like the frame is not original, the engine's not original. It's all been reimagined. But going back and saying, like, this one this drives exactly like it did in 1967 is pretty magical. Because then you like the other night, me and my wife were driving. I have a couple old original trucks, and we're just like, it's so weird. Another couple in 1968 could have been driving. We're probably driving this truck, going out to dinner, like going
like
after the dude did some chores in the yard with it and did other things. Like, it's just cool to put yourself in that mindset. So I actually appreciate and respect it.